Well, hello. This is the first discussion of Ulysses 2024, where we will be giving our first impressions of the book, how we are going about actually reading this complicated novel, and then talking a little bit about what we like and dislike so far. And I will give all of the guests a chance to speak. So, Pat, you're up first.
Okay, well, thank you. So, this is a reread for me, but it's been such a long time since I last read this that it feels like I'm coming at it for the first time. The last time I read it was, probably 40 years ago. Well, 30 something years ago. It was a long time. It was a long time ago. So I'm having a lot of ups and downs, as I said in one of my videos for this week. I like the schedule that we have. I like breaking it up into these smaller bits. That has been life-saving, I think. I find myself being much more engaged by the Bloom episodes, and I'm feeling really estranged from the Stephen episodes. And that a lot of that is just his way of being. That's who he is in the world. So the way he talks, the way he relates to people is it's much harder for me to connect. It's harder for me to follow him, and it's harder for me to connect with him. But I find that I have deep feelings for Bloom in all of his episodes. I feel a lot of empathy for him, and I am not always feeling that for Stephen. I don't always know what Stephen's talking about. I struggle. I struggle with him. But we'll talk more about that as we get into it. So that's my first impressions.
Stephen's a bit dastardly. He doesn't bathe too often. Doesn't like water.
He doesn't bathe. I forgot that about him.
He doesn't like water. He lost his glasses. Has everyone picked up on that? He's going through. Doesn't have a place to stay anymore. He's not going to stay at home. I've been. This has given me an opportunity to go through this. I know Roy has an edition of this, a copy of this, Catherine Flynn's, and there's what I like are the new essays in it. For every episode, there's a new essay by a Joycean. It's really cool, and I just so I'm liking that. And then to reread the 1922 edition, it's like they just made a copy of it, and then it has notes all around it. But so I think it's going great. Really, I don't know why I'm always surprised that this group is doing really, really well. I don't know what I was expecting, but just great.
So, Alan, how many times have you read Ulysses now?
I don't know, since 1984. My grandmother bought me my first copy of it. So, I don't know.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. My favorite novel. Like I was saying, it might not be the best novel. That's an opinion, but it's my favorite so far.
Okay, Debs, what about you?
My first read, it's not easy. I too have far more empathy with Bloom than I do with Stephen. There are certain episodes that I seriously struggled with. Episode 3 and episode 9.
Yeah.
I found really difficult.
Yeah.
I am reading side by side Hastings' Guide to James Joyce's Ulysses, and I don't think I would have managed to get this far without it. there's bits of it that are just completely over my head. And I need them pointed out to me, which is what I'm getting from Hastings' books. So that's adding to my understanding. There were certain chapters I really liked. I was a journalist. I was a journalist for a long time. I liked the newspaper one. I liked the newspaper episode very much. I liked the headlines that were put in there. I understood that bit, which helped.
It was a very fast episode, really exciting, huh? People coming and going. That's
absolutely.
the first time that Bloom sees Stephen in Hades, but that's the first time they almost meet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But go ahead, though.
Yeah. All right. I mean, it's very much old style newspaper offices, isn't it? You know, we've done this. We've made a decision. Let's go to the pub.
Right.
Yeah.
This is my Royal Irish.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm glad I'm reading it, but I think without this group and without Hastings, I probably would have DNF'd by now.
I would have been very serious to DNF myself.
I know, and that's a sad thing because a lot of great episodes are, coming up too.
Well,
you see, I'm banking on you being right here, Al. And if you're not, I'm flying to Portland and we're going to have words.
Oh, okay.
So now, Debs, you mentioned you're reading this along with Hastings. Can you? Yeah. Is that a specific guy?
Everybody holds up their Hastings.
Everyone holds up their Hastings.
How to understand Ulysses? Yeah.
It's not an edition of Ulysses; it's a guide to Ulysses.
Right? Yeah. When did that appear? When was it published?
It's new. It's relatively new.
Yeah.
2022.
Wow.
Yep. Johns Hopkins University Press.
Excellent.
Yep.
And it does it episode by episode.
Yeah.
So I'm finding it really useful.
Mm-hmm. I will have, I think, something equivalent to that once we get it to mine. Pat knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm loving your hat, Roy.
Well, you got to get into the spirit of these things.
Absolutely.
Mr. Bloom in the flesh.
Right, I'm done.
Okay, Roy, you're up.
Well, I'm really enjoying it, I must say. Not that I find it easy at all. I decided to read through the sections and just let it wash over me. So, it's like listening to music or something. Some bits jump out, some don't. So I do that first, and then I kind of make another pass with Hastings. And I've got other books as well. There's one that's like annotations, so I'm not trying to exhaustively follow every little link because there are scholars who've dedicated their whole careers to that, and they haven't done it all yet. So I'm just kind of, if there's something like, oh, what's he talking about there, this stuff about the occult scene in Dublin, that's interesting. I'll read a bit more about that. So I sort of pick up bits afterwards.
Yeah, they say Ulysses is the most studied and footnoted, or Joyce rather is most studied as Shakespeare. The most.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
So after a while, I've decided to like the fact that there's this endless depth to it, and it sort of spins off in all these fractal directions, and that it's always going to be there to come back to and explore further. So, because sometimes the plot is he walks along the beach. That's the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas in fact, there's
driven.
A lot of it's internal, and it's the narrator, it's the character, and it's this mental activity.
Right.
I think you just got to accept it's kind of peering into this chaos, really.
Have you cracked your Flynn edition open yet, Roy?
Yeah, that's another thing. I read the essays, but afterwards, I do like to read the sections sort of pure.
I do.
A lot of stuff that I'm typing out in Discord is directly from these essays, by the way, or it might be like I'll go back into one of my editions and read my notes on it, but a lot of it is from these essays.
This may sound ridiculous, but it's just so damn big.
Yeah.
If I'm lying around wanting to read a book, it's like I can't read this. I'd suffocate.
It'd kill you.
That's why I tend to come back to it and read it. It's like I need to get a pulpit.
Yes, exactly.
Put it on that and do a daily reading.
A rostrum. Yeah. I need a rostrum. Yeah, I'd like to get a dictionary this big too. I love those old big dictionaries, but
it is like the family Bible and those ones.
Yeah, a friend of mine bought a second-hand lectern, put it at the top of his stairs with a big book, and people would go off to go to the loo, and they wouldn't come back again because they'd be up at the stairs looking at
funny.
the book.
That's great.
Way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, Roy, you
Yeah. I'm kind of Team Bloom, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm warming to Stephen now. I can sort of see. I think he has such a hard time in the museum trying to expound his great theory about Shakespeare, and the other guys, they're wandering in and out. They're not interested. They got their own things going on. So I can sort of see he is another outsider character. It's just that he's much more in his head. Whereas Bloom is very physical. It's food. It's walking about. It's
he's an earthy man.
I also feel more sorry for him than I do for Stephen. I haven't felt sorry for Stephen yet, but I think everybody's mean to Bloom and they're nasty to him, and I feel sorry for him.
Well, Debs, let's hold, because there's a few things I want to, especially Alan may know about anti-Semitism and Joyce and how much there is in that. So let's just hold that thought until we get into the meat of what we've read.
Yeah.
We'll have to go. You're next.
Hello. Yes. No, it's okay. So for me, this is my first time reading Ulysses. I've read Dubliners before, which I quite enjoyed, but obviously it's Joyce in chunks, which I think is much more approachable. I haven't got a fancy edition. I've got my battered students edition, which I thought would have more in it, but it's actually just very plain. It's got no extra anything to it apart from an introduction. And for myself, I'd probably go against the grain here. I think I'm not hearing your own thing yet, Greg, but probably not Team Bloom fully.
Ooh,
okay.
Controversial.
Because I think there's like you say, everybody is mean to him, but then at some point, I think you have to draw the line there and realize if you're the common denominator of everybody's dislike, it being completely baseless all the time doesn't ring true for me at the moment. So and obviously it's not a Bildungsroman or whatever it is, so we're already starting further down people's lives. And these people already have a history, so I imagine anything they have against Bloom is already there. We're just catching up, aren't we, with the story as to where it is. It's that one day in the life of, and there's been decades before that, and long seated histories between the characters. And then for Stephen, it again goes a lot over my head. Like I said, I've got no other books. I've got no Hastings or anything like that. I'm just every now and then I'll Google Latin or French or whatever it is to see what the translation of that is. And I have it here to highlight how unread it is because it's brand new. I wish I'd read my Shakespeare because at this moment it's apart from anecdotal understandings of some Shakespeare things, I don't get some of the parallels that are being drawn and stuff like that. So, but that's not. I don't think that's taking away from me for what the actual story is, because I think I can discern within the story between the difference of action and movement, where there's a lot of movement all the time, but it's not necessarily always action. And then I think to ring true of what Timothy said, I think the newspaper scene was quite good in the way it was set up, and I think I don't know why it popped into my head with the Frank Capra film, where it was just that style of news speak and that type of office thing of just you're trying to catch up with the most quick-witted people in the room, and it's a bit much to try and comprehend it sometimes.
And
it does move. Go on.
It's like I heard that like the headlines were an afterthought. Chapter. They had written the entire, and then he started inserting the headlines.
Well, I also don't have the Hades chapter titles or anything in the issue I've got. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I know there's from quickly looking at it on Wikipedia, there are 2 separate structures that Joyce gave to people to say, if you want to understand it in its parts.
Oh, the schemata.
Yeah, the schemata in 2 different ways.
So,
which I didn't delve into too far for fear of spoilers for the story. But I do know the overall gist of the story from, I think, there's a clip of Salman Rushdie explaining it in 30 seconds or something.
Yes.
That I've seen where he just explains it very succinctly in like 3 sentences that just cover it all. So I think I now know the story as it stands, but obviously the only other issue I have with the stream of consciousness, so for example, like in Mrs. Dalloway, I quite enjoyed the stream of consciousness in that.
Yeah.
Because that felt for me in place with some of the characters, especially the veteran who had PTSD. That to me made sense stylistically. Whereas with this, I'm struggling with it in the same way I struggled with Cormac McCarthy's The Road, in that the dialogue is one way, but then the narration, whether it's first person or omnipotent or whatever it is so much higher brow than the dialogue.
Right.
I feel that happens with this, even though Stephen does a good job of waxing lyrical himself and talking about Hamlet's grandson and Shakespeare's and all the theories that he expounds and stuff like that. But the rest of the time, it feels like it's a bit too much for what is actually. I'm struggling to pick out what is that person's thought process in the moment versus what is Joyce's narration in that moment, and that constantly going back and forth and not being able to track it. And then with speech as well, the fact that I think I said at the beginning, I don't like the speech style of how it's written, because apart from when it says Stephen said, the immediate next bit after the comma, I'm not sure if that's still just in the same category as Stephen said, or whether that's it's whether it's a run-on sentence of.
But that's how like the Spanish write too. I mean, Don Quixote is written like that in dashes and.
Yeah, well, Alan, let's. That's another thing. If you can answer, like his dialogue style is just a little bit different. But any more?
No, that's it for me.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I just want. There is like a plot to it in a way, because you were wondering are they gonna meet Bloom and Steven? Is Molly gonna hook up with Bolin? There's a little bit of a plot, but it is really character driven.
Okay, I've got my Gabbler edition here. I did technically listen to the audiobook in the 90s, and that was just straight audiobook listening to it. And going over for the second time, it's like the newsroom scene.
Right.
It's just totally baffling if you're just listening to it.
I can imagine.
But it makes sense when you're reading along with the text. And one of the things is, like Roy says, I don't want to get every nuance out of this book right now. I want to get through it. And by listening to the audio and reading along, it keeps me on pace with just reading and not stopping and not getting lost in what all these huge words that like concatenated together, and you're going, what the hell was that word? And then he has these weird sounds, like and the narrator does a good job in making those sounds into something. There's also a lot of time where the narrator breaks into a little bit of a song. You know, you're just reading along the text and get like, I would not have thought that was a song.
Oh, like those lovely seaside girls.
No, that's a little more obvious. Like when he actually breaks out the text. But sometimes just the dialogue. Now maybe that's just the narrator's interpretation of someone just all of a sudden breaking into tiny little songs when you're speaking, you know.
Like a pinch on now. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the things I'm also doing in reading this is, at least in my edition, you have line numbers.
Yep.
And I have found that the chapters in the audiobook are all just about 300 lines long. So I've gotten, and I'm sorry, they're more like 150 lines, but I listen to 2 audio chapters a day, are about 300 lines per day. And that usually gets me through like chapter 9 in 2 days. and chapter 8. They're about the same, about 2 days. So it's keeping me moving along at a very steady pace. There's a little bit of wiggle room. Like one day I didn't get to pick this up, and I'm still on target to finish my reading assignments for the week, even with that. So that's how I'm reading this, and I'm absolutely Team Bloom here. He's much more sympathetic to me, and I can understand a lot of what he's going through. And Stephen, well, now that I'm basically done with my thing, we can start getting into what we like and dislike about this book. And our bigger impressions or smaller impressions. So what have been people's favorite parts so far? I think a lot of people already mentioned the newsroom scene.
Yeah.
I like Hades, the funeral thing. There's a lot of stage direction in that too. You can tell where Cunningham and Mr. Powers and Mr. Daedalus and Bloom are sitting in the carriage, and then we didn't talk too much about Dilly Daedalus, Stephen's sister, who we see. I think her father meets her. Have we come to that yet?
I don't remember her.
I think that's upcoming.
Oh, well, first she's selling furniture on the street for money. And second, she sells Stephen's books. Third, she runs into her father and asks for money for food. He doesn't give it to her. He goes off and drinks it.
Yeah, Alan, you're ahead of the game.
Spoilers.
Well, I'm just saying, like, things will reoccur like that. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about episode 9 with the Shakespeare. That was in episode 1 where remember Buck Mulligan said he proves by algebra that
right. He mentioned
it is really convoluted. We can get into that if we want to get to that episode, but
that's one of the things I was actually talking to my wife. Mentioned that I was reading Ulysses, and she just sort of looked up at me like, "Really?"
I mean, it's readable. I mean, it's certainly readable.
Yeah.
You do get looked at pretentiously, though. I've taken it into work and had it on my desk, and people walk past and look at you, and they look at you like you're pretending to be reading Ulysses.
Wow. Well, I don't know. Dublin is a character in it too. I mean, I love the book for a lot of reasons.
Do you find though that there's not that I take issue with it because of this reason, but if any of you watched the TV show The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is a really good comedy show, but there's a part in that where there's a theatre critic, and they all go and watch the show, and him and the other critics are all talking about how the character's wearing sandals, therefore it's a reference to Jesus, and the actual author of the play comes in, and the wife of that character says, "I think it was just about a love of a boy and his dog." And she says, "I'll settle this," and asks him. And he says, "Oh, yeah, it's about the love I had for my dog." That's it. That's what the story's about. And it's that thing of, I think, with the circularity around it, and there's a lot of circularity within Ulysses as well, where, like you say, there's a lot of bookending of... Because I quite like poetry as well, so there are, like you say, Greg, there's like almost lyrical elements to it, where there's epistrophe and anaphora going on, where there's lots of this rhymes with this, or there's, they say, the noise making, where it becomes... that word then trips into a pattern of noise making to get to another beginning of a sentence. Yeah.
Well, that's which I think part of his stream of consciousness, where your brain latches onto something and it goes off in that direction for a little bit before having to try to pull you back into a later paragraph.
Did anybody find with the Hades scene with the funeral that I was very much reminded of The Stranger by Albert Camus in that type of...
that's one of Greg's favorites.
I did not pick up Camus.
Not that I picked it up, but in terms of for me, there was a disconnect from Bloom's perspective in that. In everybody who's navigating to that funeral, it didn't seem to me that anybody necessarily cared. They said they cared, and they said it was a shame that he had died.
Yeah.
But even on Bloom's route to it, he's thinking every other thought he possibly can, and then realizing that the funeral is getting in the way of him doing his other pursuits, whatever they might be.
Yeah.
Mm.
I can see that, Will. I mean, in The Stranger, nobody is really into that funeral except that the old man,
Yeah.
the boyfriend who's like running behind the funeral procession, and he's weeping and he's really into it, but everybody else is just like going through motions.
Yeah.
An
It seemed like-
obligation that you have to do.
Yes.
Mm.
Right.
Because I think you raised this point, Alan, as well. In that scene as well, does it seem that potentially the ghost type character that appears there, that there's a stranger that then is there, and is that potentially the only person who really cares there because nobody recognizes them? Would that be the equivalent type person? There's one mourner there who nobody recognizes.
Sure, I can see that.
Because they actually were there for the person instead, rather than
they get his name wrong though in the book. M. Tosh. They get Bloom's name wrong too. Boom.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about Bloom's Jewishness?
I kind of did.
Well, he converted to Catholicism for Molly, and he certainly doesn't practice a kosher home, does
No,
he?
he doesn't.
No.
Eating kidneys with a taste of urine in it. Yeah, he goes to church. He goes to a Catholic church. I mean, for like just a brief. I don't know if he did yet. I forget. His father, is Jewish, and his real name is Balad, which means flower, or Balad. That's his father's name, who committed suicide. But
so is Bloom just almost like a play on the flower name then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then even with that letter to Martha Clifford, he is Henry Flower.
Yeah.
His alias.
Yes.
But I see what I'm kind of curious is like Bloom does not identify really as being Jewish anymore, but
Correct.
it seems that everyone else still sees him as one, and he's not allowed to break out of the mold that he wants to break out of.
Well, he had a
Cyclops episode.
He has a copy of the, I can't remember what it was called now. He has a copy of a land registry or a Zionism magazine, doesn't he? At one point in this chapter, I think, or in the previous chapter, there's definitely something that I looked up, and it was. I can't. Yeah, I think so.
There is a newspaper that he's holding on to. I'm trying to remember exactly.
Yeah.
Throwaway, I think that's going to come into play too, because there's a horse race, and I won't spoil it, but Throwaway is a major another shiny thing.
He hasn't. It hasn't said that he's converted to Catholicism yet, has it?
Well, Molly's Catholic, and he kind of did.
I don't.
Yeah, I picked that up somewhere.
Did you?
I don't sense that he's very devout either way.
No,
yeah,
I don't
definitely.
know religion.
It's more like he just said, "Okay, I'll convert for you."
It's because they made a bigger deal of how he was Jewish, but not practicing, than they did about any other religion.
Well, Stephen Dedalus is essentially an atheist, I gather.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he caught a lot of stuff from Buck Mulligan, didn't he, for not kneeling at his mother's grave? That's how the book kind of starts out. It's 4 months after a portrait where he gets a telegram from his father, "Come home, mother dying."
Right.
Yeah.
And that is Joyce's experience. That's based on Joyce's life. I mean,
yeah, him and his brother Stanislaus would not kneel or pray for her.
Right.
Just because they were against the church.
He abandoned the church. Yeah.
Wholeheartedly.
Would you say then that it's lapsed Judaism and lapsed Catholicism mixed with Stephen's non-belief then? Because there's constant references to the same way you would get with I can't remember the guy's name now. Arthur Conan Doyle, that type of there's like this period contains a lot of spiritualism for some people, despite their intellectual status. And there's obviously all the references to, is it George Roberts or A?
Oh, Russell,
yeah. Sorry, George Russell. Yeah, with the diphthong A constantly appearing there, or it being A and E separated out, and then A and E words keep appearing, and or Joe, Russ, and lots of. So no, for
E-I-O-U even.
Yeah, I did like that. Actually, that was quite good lyricism for as it went along. But I don't know if that's.
There's a lot of the Celtic revival and that Yeats was involved in, and those who are against it. Joyce was not all for the Celtic revival in that. I don't know. I can't remember exactly why not. I think he thought he wasn't in all the fairy stuff and lore and that as much as Yeats and some others.
Right. Was Bloom's mother Catholic also?
I can't remember.
I feel like I read that somewhere. So he's not Jewish. He's not Catholic. He's had no religion at all. But everybody treats him or excludes him. They're anti-Semitic toward him. But he's not really Jewish, and he's not Christian, and he knows nothing about Catholicism. But I think his mother was Catholic.
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't recall that one.
I don't know where I got that from.
Let me try to Google it real fast.
I wonder where the Jewishness comes into it then, because as far as I understand it, doesn't Jewishness follow? It's not patriarchal in terms of lineage.
From the mother, exactly.
Yeah, yes.
Somewhere I have written here, Rudolph Bloom married a Catholic. Bloom's father converted.
But no, that can't, because Will's right, because in the Jewish tradition, he wouldn't be considered Jewish at all.
Correct. Exactly. That's why I'm bringing it up. That was my point.
Hey, here we go. Bloom's mother,
however, was Ellen Higgins, an Irish Catholic. Technically, yes. Bloom is not Jewish.
Yeah, there you go. Good one, Pat.
An Irish Catholic. I don't know where I got that from, but I know I read that somewhere.
Well, it's your great memory.
Yeah. Not really.
Yeah, great. I didn't know her name. We got her name and everything. Helen
Higgins.
So one of the things I was talking with my wife about is reading over chapter 9, and I was trying to tell her about Stephen's theory on Shakespeare, and I was really not doing a very good job describing how because Hamlet's ghost was played by Shakespeare. He's his own grandfather,
right? And Hamnet, Shakespeare's son, died at 11, like Rudy.
Right. That's true.
But so yeah, we've got Hamnet dying, which makes the play begins. Play comes on. I don't want to read all this, but
okay, Alan. Well. My point was, we both studied English literature at university. That's why. Did you ever have to write a paper that you knew was total BS and it was just due, and you had to come up with a theory to talk about something, and then you submitted to your professor, and the professor said, "Okay, that's fine."
That's a good one, Greg.
So, my theory is you're always looking for these connections in literature that really aren't there. They're just stuff you make up to impress someone. And I'm going is that really what James Joyce is thinking about Ulysses? Is he thumbing our nose this whole book saying, you're searching for all this meaning in this book? But really, it's your search that's what is meaningful. It's not in the book. It's what you're bringing to the book. And I sort of want to
for 100 years.
I just want to throw that out. I mean,
yeah, it's a good point, Greg.
I think it's 51-49. I think it's nearly an even split, but not quite, between Joyce clearly being capable to do it himself and to put in a lot of references, But then I imagine he's also clever enough to put in a lot of dead ends, like you say, Greg, that probably will lead people to just trying to draw connections between things that aren't necessarily there.
Yeah. Well,
And then
take a lot of pleasure out of it.
yeah.
Didn't he say something like he wanted to keep the English professors busy for the rest of their
For
lives?
100 years.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, he's done a good job.
I think he wanted. I think he kind of wanted to do it for himself, because I've recently read Blood in the Mist by Hope Merleys and her narrative poem Paris, which is really long and is very similar because it's stream of consciousness poem and it's really hard to follow. And if your friends are people like this and the expatriates, and you naturally hang around with Hemingway and Gertrude Stein and everybody else, you're writing for your immediate audience, and you don't want to make it easy for them, and vice versa. So I imagine there's a lot. It feels like there's a lot of showmanship to it.
Can you repeat this poem again?
The poem that I Paris.
No, the one you just described. The one you're just describing.
Paris by Hope Merleys.
Paris by
Hope Merleys. HOP. Yeah, she was in the Virginia Woolf published her to begin with.
Okay.
So she's in that type of set, like the Bloomsbury set or whatever it's referred to as. And thankfully there's an appendix at the back that explains all the references, because it's a particular poster on the French subway in 1919 that I would never know, and no reader now would ever know what that means whatsoever. But it's that I don't think it works as a poem, and there's bits of this where I don't think where they're like in chapter 9, as heady as it is, I don't think it works fully as a chapter for a reader if you weren't in that circle and know all the references. And basically, if you're not Stephen or people around him, Buck Mulligan, whoever else it is, if you don't have the wittiness of thought to immediately come back with nobody's unfunny in this book so far, if that makes sense. There are people who just aren't funny, but the people that you're getting, the people that say something in reference to something else, that spawn another reference to something else, and before you know it, it's a theory about his grandfather's ghost being his son, therefore, and it's a Christian metaphor for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and which one came first, and 2 above 1 or 1 above 2, and I think I can't track it. So I'm not, like you said, Greg, I'm not trying to track it too much in this first reading. I just want to get to the end, have a feeling of satisfaction, and then maybe touch it again in 40 years, like Pat.
Well, this first week has been, I think, the most hardest, because we're chapter 9. Joyce in the manuscript wrote, this is the end of the first part of Ulysses. We're halfway through with the episodes. So we're going to have more time as,
the episodes get longer and more detailed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're meant to decode the things, though. I think it's more about seeing the process of the spinning out of the meanings, this great fountain of meaning.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like the ideal reading would be just being able to understand everything that Stephen's saying and thinking. It reminds me of progressive rock albums, when you get like a triple album set of all this ornate music and weird lyrics, and you'd never understand it, but you could kind of wow, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, that sort of stuff.
I love that. I listen to that. I have a few Yes albums. Yeah.
I think too that Stephen does have something to say. He has a theory, but he's not being articulate in this chapter. I mean, I don't think we're supposed to come out of chapter 9 and understand his theory of Shakespeare and Hamlet. And, I think he's deliberately, or not even deliberate, he's obtuse, and nobody's really listening to him, and they're making fun of him, and he's not being clear. He's not being articulate. So you come away with this idea, there's something there, and he does have some parallels to Hamlet. And Hamlet does have parallels in Shakespeare's life, but it's not being revealed yet. And I think that's coming later. I don't think we're supposed to come out of chapter 9 and think, oh, well, I understand, what Stephen's thinking. I think this meeting was kind of a disaster for him, because he doesn't really, he's not able to articulate himself. And half the time he's talking to himself as he's
been drinking too. They just got back from
Yes.
And
from the
is
newspaper.
there a point where someone asked Stephen, do you actually believe that?
And he said, no.
Yeah.
That's why I think he's just a college
I
student
don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
with a term paper due and has to come up with a big idea.
I know.
I like the idea of an inarticulate writer.
Yeah.
Did you think as well that Stephen took particular umbrage with Mulligan when Mulligan just jots down on a piece of paper everything that Stephen's trying to get to in just a brief, like the bill for a play where he just every man his own wife or a honeymoon in the hand by Barlocky Mulligan, which is just rude again. And then the characters' names are all just crude innuendo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even in that Hastings book, though, at the beginning of the chapter about episode 9, he says, "My aim in this chapter is to get you to the other side of episode 9 so you can get on with the rest of the book."
Right. Exactly.
Well, that's a lot like chapter 3.
Yeah.
Because when I say like I'm listening to the great courses, that's just a college level class on each episode. And I remember the professor was saying many readers just quit at chapter 3.
Or they skip it.
Or they just skip it. And that's what I remember he says, if you're really having trouble, just skip it. And I hope you don't skip it. But it's better to skip it and go on than
to ditch it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he sees that drowning man that and talks about that, and sees a dead dog and thinks about death, but and Aristotle, but I mean, we didn't really.
Well, the problem is with this kind of book, you could have a whole live stream on just one chapter.
Oh yeah.
There's so many rabbit holes you can fall down, isn't there?
But like I said, I'm actually looking forward to picking this book because that's the first thing I try to do in the morning now. Is I have my routine. Got to feed the cats. Got to go for my walk, and then I pick up Ulysses.
Good.
Yeah, it's a morning book for me as well. My brain gets fuzzier as the day gets on, so it's definitely a morning book for me.
It's a whenever I can book for me.
Now, the thing is, I think you still have a day job and you still have a wife and young kids.
So I get up about usually before 6 every morning. Try and read a little bit in the morning. Try and a little bit on the commute. Try and read a bit on my lunch break if I can. Try and read a bit in the afternoon. Try and finish it in the evening. So the actual schedule that we've got. I know you're saying about the Proust thing later on here being 10 pages a day. That's probably kind of. I can probably do about 20 pages a day on average. Some days I fall behind. So I know in our future schedule, there's so this is the. I did used to read more than one book at once as well, but I found that I wasn't paying enough attention to books reading that way. I was too all over the place, and so this is my only reading at the moment. But I figured because, like I say, because there are so many rabbit holes and there's so many things that you can I can spend a good 10 minutes not reading this after just having read something and then just sitting there for a minute. Face on hand, just going.
Yeah,
I think we're having fun though reading it. And ultimately,
I am surprised that I'm having this much fun reading it. And a lot of it is that we have this core group.
Yeah.
And I agree that this is a kind of book you probably don't want to read in a silo. All by yourself, and
I've found it's very easy to just drift away from it, not liking it, just sort of finding other things to do.
Yeah.
So the group and the schedule is really, really great.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the Discord because I don't know about everybody else, but I know I think Hannah recently did a video about a certain tag about how you read, and I don't annotate or take notes or anything along those lines whatsoever. So having the actual Discord here where I'm coming across it and I can reference a line number and then go back to it, I'm actually finding quite beneficial. Or when somebody else highlights a particular line, I'll go back to it. Unless it's ahead of me, then I'll wait until I get to it and then give it a bit more focal attention. Yeah. So this is probably the deepest reading I've done, because it is almost line by line at times, because it is numbered, so you can actually focus on it that way. And the pace is working for me really well.
Will, I'm the same way. I don't annotate when I read most. Sometimes I get the sticky tabs and highlight, but I'm not doing it for Ulysses, even though sometimes I think I really should just highlight some good passages. But I just want to get through this book. I want to say that I've read it, and if someone asks you a question, you can have at least a few answers to show that you've actually read parts of this.
Yeah, it's great to be in a group of hardcore readers like you all.
It is, and now we're at 45 minutes, which is
wow.
I know. There's even if you want to go on just a little bit longer, there's at least one other thing I wanted to talk about is that both Stephen and Bloom have had a death of a loved one.
Yeah.
Stephen, the death of the mother, and Bloom, the death of his young son.
And his father by suicide, too.
Yeah.
By suicide.
Yeah.
And just their reactions to death and how they're dealing with. I mean, Alan, I don't know if there's going to be more of that in this book or anyone else who wants to chime in and talk about how each character is dealing with death.
I think Stephen's definitely philosophically dealing with death.
Yes.
And Bloom's filling up his life with as much things as possible to keep distance from death.
Yeah.
That's why I think there's so much gluttony, there's so much detail around clothing as well in particular. I've noticed more so than Stephen. Stephen seems to just have can't remember the name for it, his stick. He's got a particular stick that he seems to be walking around with.
He has ash plant.
Yeah, his ash plant. It crops up every now and then. He's
not even wearing his own pants. He's wearing Buck's plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Stephen.
But I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say. I think the whole fascination with Hamlet is about his difficulty with death as well, but he's not dealing with it. You know, he's dealing with it philosophically. It's an intellectual exercise for him right now. But you know, Hamlet is looking at the ghost of his father. Stephen is looking at the ghost of his mother, and she keeps coming back to him in dreams. You know, she's kind of a ghost. So it's an intellectual exercise for him, but I think it's showing us that he's cut off from his deep feelings that he has to have about the loss of his mother.
Really riddled with guilt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that part of that is why I think I feel for Bloom more. Is like he's taken like the death of his son so much to heart, and now Pat's going to know, like in the Jewish tradition, he's got it reversed about the health comes from the father. It's like, no, that's how Bloom is interpreted, but it's actually in the Jewish, it's from the mother, and he's all confused and he's blaming himself.
Yes.
Where it really is not his fault.
Right.
I think it's deliberate as well that Bloom's got so much life in his life, even though it's following a death. Like, because everything is about the sensation of, everything's about the now sensation of a taste, the thought of a taste, past memories of a taste, or whatever it is. It just seems to constantly be the case, or even when he's speaking to anybody else, when he's speaking to is it when his wife is in bed and he burns the liver downstairs and he goes upstairs?
Yeah.
He's even having thoughts about her in a state of undress, but that level of undress being life-giving undress, I think it said. Or there's something about like nurture of milk or some equivalent to something along those lines of udders or something like that. He said it was a bit crassly worded, as Bloom does every now and then with some of these things. But it was that type of, there's so much life going on in his episodes, so it'd be interesting to see when the two characters meet and they mix, who are we going to side with more in a scene when they do come together, because it is different positions.
I don't know.
Stephen Smith and his father, Mr. Dillis isn't a great father, like I think I mentioned, but then Bloom is missing his son.
Bloom is looking for a son, and Stephen's looking for a father.
Yeah.
Will they ever meet?
Some of us don't know, because some of us haven't read it before.
Yeah, I try not to talk about spoilers too much, but it's kind of hard. I mean, it's hard for me to keep track of.
Well, Alan, you've read this so many times. It's like,
Yeah.
Like you said, the episodes are probably washing together.
Yeah, in my edition, I went through line by line with Frank Delaney, the late great Frank Delaney. Did not personally, of course, but he did an online thing out of New York and died in the middle of it. So we didn't really get through all the entire novel with him, but that was really great to go through it line by line. He would spend like an hour on half a page. Crazy.
That's about my reading speed.
What's going on with Bloom and his relationship with the female members of his entourage?
Yeah, he's kind of a little horny bastard, you could say.
Well, he's not touching Molly
for 10 years.
For 10 years that he's, I guess.
Well, they have not had proper sex.
Correct.
And then I have no idea where this woman who is writing to him has come from.
Martha Clifford.
Yes, Martha.
Yeah, so he's having like a little epistolary affair himself, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's not the only.
Part of me hopes that what's the song called? If you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain.
Yeah.
I'm almost hoping that it turns out to be Molly, and she's also living this.
Well, yeah, that he put an advertisement for a woman to help
for a secretary,
and
he got some replies, and then he was a little dirty with his own reply because he doesn't want a secretary. He wants like a pen pal, and then this Martha Clifford replied, if that's her real name, we don't know. And you don't know what his first letter to her was, but she's calling him dirty boy and all this stuff. And
yeah, she's full on, isn't she?
Yeah. What kind of perfume does your wife wear?
Yeah. Reply instantly this second.
Did you notice as well? This might just me reading too much into it, but in that scene, in that letter, there's a pin inside that letter, isn't there, of some kind?
Yeah.
And he throws it away, and then I didn't know if in the Hades chapter that's referenced back to when it's a silent, you could hear a pin drop. I didn't know if that was him having a moment of regret or doubt, or knowing that now he's in a church, he's being observed from a higher power. So it's almost like he can hear his own pin drop because he was secluded when he threw it away and when he tore up the envelope. So I wasn't sure if that was a parallel back to that as well.
That's very
interesting.
Good.
That is a good one.
Yep.
Yeah. A lot of things like that. Throw away the newspaper. There's going to be things coming up like that.
So next
Cyclops chat episode you guys are going to love, and Wandering Rocks. Nausicaa is one of my favorites. That's where we might have some problems with Bloom and his treatment and admiration of other females comes into play.
Yeah, there's the very famous scene with Bloom on the.
Correct.
That's coming up.
Then the Cyclops has some great scenes in it. Dog Gary Owen appears. I thought you'd really, Greg, like the fourth episode, Cyclops with the Bloom's cat and the cat meows.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I like the cat.
I knew you'd like Bloom for that, and being a cat person.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a dog that appears in Cyclops.
So next week is 10 to 12.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's, what is it, about 104 pages. Yeah, so it's a little bit longer than what we've been doing, but not too much longer. I
think looking forward in the schedule, it was is it one of the end parts where the one part on its own is about 160
Yeah,
pages.
140.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the play.
Know the play,
Yeah.
and know the
Oh,
decision.
I
I
see.
decided.
I'm not dreading that too much. It's when I've flicked through the book before and then stop towards the end of it. There just seems to be pages of just full top to bottom text where there didn't seem to be any paragraph breaks. And I thought, oh, if there's 100 pages there, that's going to be hard to get
No,
through.
I think
It's just
Alan said that it's a play, so it should be a little easier to get through. It's not really 146 pages, really.
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's a play that could not be produced. You cannot produce a play, but it's pretty hilarious and pretty wild, pretty masochistic. Yeah, wait till we get to it.
All right. Any last thoughts?
What about you, Mr. Bloom, Roy?
I do get the impression that there's some kind of mental battle going on inside Stephen's head. I don't really know what that's about yet. I think that's part of it. One reason he's so unhappy.
Yes.
And it's interesting, they're very much opposites, him and Bloom, you know. I mean, Bloom will have a bath for the pleasure of it, whereas Stephen won't have them at all for some strange intellectual reason. So.
Yeah, and you know, he's walking, when he was walking on Sandymount Strand, when I visited Martello Tower, you can bathe there naked from before 11 a.m. Only men. At least this is back in 96. So he's walking right there. He could take a little dunk in the Irish Sea, you know.
Yeah, come on, Stephen, get it together.
All right. Well, let's call it an episode. We're just at 56 minutes, longer than I actually wanted it to be, but it's a good talk.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Definitely.
Let's call it an end. So, if you're watching, goodbye, and we should have another one in 2 weeks.
Good.
Right?
Bye, everybody.
All right.
Cool. Nice
Take
to
care,
see you.
everyone. Nice to see everyone.